Savage Dragon 68 from October of 1999. Dragon versus Powerhouse, round 2. We have seen this fight before, and a very similar cover back in issue 48 there. We'll look back at this one later, as well as the rubber match in issue 244. So, man, that's some pretty good looking covers, but we got to get moving. There's a lot to cover. On to the credits page. Erik Larsen, writer and artist. Chris Eliopoulos, letterer. Ruben Rude and Abel Moten, colors. And Josh Eckhorn, Don't Wanna Be No Fuddy-Duddy, which is a reference to a lyric from the 1999 Sting song Brand New Day. I was not familiar, but apparently Larsen is a fan of Sting's solo work. So this story is bookended by Dragon's ex-girlfriend, Debbie. She has been murdered by a jealous ex, reanimated as a corpse by her mother, duplicated on Dark World, then killed in a flying saucer crash on God World, where she was reanimated again as an angel or a harpy with wings here. Then she was stranded on Earth with other gods like Thor, who is plotting something sinister along with some of these other guys, and Debbie overhears their plans before flying away. Now it's Angel's first day of school, and Dragon walks her into the kindergarten classroom, worried about how it's going to go. But Angel makes friends immediately and is super excited, so Dragon was stressing for no reason. The kids all swarm Dragon, asking him a million questions, and Angel finds her friend Maxine. Shocking to me. I had no clue that Maxine, who goes on to marry Malcolm Dragon and have Savage Dragon's grandchildren, her first appearance is way back here in issue 68. I was completely oblivious to that because her character disappears from the book for like 100 issues and about a decade. But she's very much a critical character to the Savage Dragon universe, and I had no idea that Larsen had planted her this far back in Angel's kindergarten class. Crazy. So Dragon hops into the car with Alex, his former partner, when he was police. But they've been more than friends going all the way back to issue 48, which I showed earlier. This is the issue that Dragon and Alex started hooking up in a friends with benefits situation. But now Alex wants something more from this relationship than casual sex, and Dragon starts to squirm, but she pins him down, calls out the hypocrisy of his refusal to make a commitment to her. But he does call her a good friend, which inspires her to boot him out of the car and tells him to drop dead. So she hates his ass, rightfully so, I would say. Almost as much as Erik Larsen hates to draw cars. So this panel here, Erik Larsen admitted to swiping from Jason Pearson in Dragon Blood and Guts, issue 3. Larsen just cut and pasted the car from this panel here, Alex's car from issue 3. I never would have known. Seems like fair play. So now Dragon has been dumped. Luckily, it's a short walk to his front door, where he goes inside to find Powerhouse sitting off in the shadows. And Dragon says, "You're in my chair." So Powerhouse gets up and he threatens Dragon, telling him to stay out of the vicious circle business, or else his friends and family will suffer the consequences. So this pisses Dragon off. And he says that if anything happens to his family or friends, he'll find Powerhouse and he'll rip his fucking throat open. So I didn't even clock this when I was reading the book, but there's like 3 F-bombs dropped in this issue. A lot of the comics I read have plenty of filthy language, including Savage Dragon, so no big deal. But when I was reading the reaction to issue 68 in the letters page, multiple fanatics bring up this increase in swear words in the book, so it's noteworthy. And Larsen responds to the critics, quote, "The debate over swearing can be a heated one. This book, over its 7 years, has mutated, and as much as we might want Savage Dragon to be a mainstream superhero book, it has stopped being that quite some time ago, and there's no turning back. At this point, the book is pretty much for mature readers. However, it has made it a bit easier on me. Now that I know I'm off limits for a younger reader, it's given me freedom to do as I please in this publication. The prime time rule has pretty much been thrown out the window." End quote. So Larsen's prime time rule that he's referring to is essentially that he would push the comic as far as primetime network TV would go in terms of language and sex. For example, NYPD Blue would show like bare asses and say bullshit on national TV, but it wasn't R rated. So now Larson says that that's out the window, and he's essentially going for mature readers, and he's not treating this like a mainstream superhero comic anymore. And I would disagree and kind of argue with Larson that this was ahead of the curve on what mainstream superhero comics would become. And he was kind of riding that same wave of books like Sin City and Preacher and Authority, which were wildly popular at this time, and that also featured, mature content. And looking into the future, books like Invincible and The Boys would also become popular mainstream superhero comics for mature readers. Larson seems to perceive children as the largest demographic of comic book readers, but I would say that the writing was on the wall at this point in time and that the younger audience was gone. Comics' primary audience are adults in the 21st century. So I didn't mean to ramble for so long, but I've been looking out for moments when this shifts tonally to an adults only book, and I hadn't thought we crossed that point yet, but apparently Larson does, which is funny to me because this feels very much like a superhero comic. For instance, we're about to go through an 8-page slugfest between Dragon and Powerhouse, which is a majority of the book. So it kind of starts off comedically. Dragon asking Powerhouse if he would mind taking this outside because there's been recent repairs to the house since the last time there was a brawl inside. So Powerhouse is honorable, and he steps into the backyard so he can kick Dragon's ass. Then he just blocks a punch, and he flies Dragon a mile into the air. So they start beating the hell out of each other, knocking each other through buildings, into people's apartments and vehicles, plenty of collateral damage, all the while debating the plight of the super freaks in this world. And, in the Savage Dragon universe, this is one of the more evenly matched battles between two of the more powerful characters. Actually, Powerhouse seems to have the upper hand here because he can fly. And so he takes Dragon into the upper atmosphere, now where we can see all the stars in the sky that are visible. And then Mighty Man comes to the rescue. He clobbers Powerhouse with a sucker punch and escorts Dragon down to earth. All the while, Powerhouse reveals that the Vicious Circle is somehow controlling the police and the Special Operations Strike Force, the SOS. So that's new information. Anyway, the fight is over, and we didn't get an answer on who would win, really, because Mighty Man interrupted. And now we'll have to wait like 20 years for the rubber match. Issue 244 from 2019. I'm going to go ahead and show this off because I think this is the best of all three of these fights. The entire issue is dedicated to the story of Malcolm Dragon versus Powerhouse on pay-per-view. And the whole comic is these like double-page spreads with the action kind of spilling across both pages. Look how gorgeous this thing is, man. I love the lettering and the coloring. Spoiler, Dragon finally beats Powerhouse, who has a human form. Who knew? We'll get to that later. So back to issue 68. Mighty Man's alter ego is, of course, Nurse Ann Stevens, which is convenient because now she can stitch up Dragon's wounds. Also convenient because she has a crush on Dragon. And now that Alex is out of the picture, she lets Dragon know that she is willing to do anything for him. Anything at all. And he's like, you got a car? Because he needs to go pick up Angel from school. It's the end of the school day. So Anne gives Dragon a lift to go get his daughter. And she is super excited about her first day at kindergarten. This page is great, really capturing the energy of a child who has like a million things to tell you and is talking a mile a minute. Larson really captures these gestures well with her arms and legs all over the place. Then her lunchbox flying over her head as she's like sprinting into the house to go watch cartoons or whatever. Also, there's another panel of a car right there. I couldn't find where that was from, but I would bet you $1 million that is cut and pasted from somewhere. That's a sharp looking car. There's no way he drew that. Anyway, I said Debbie bookends this comic, and that's where the book ends, with Debbie crash landing into Dragon's house, setting up the plot for next issue. On to the letters page. A truncated Fanatics, only 3 pages, which is fine, because Larson says here that the reception for the sketchbook section, last issue, where he showed off this Dark Lord sketches in issue 67, he said that was so popular that he's bringing it back, and he's going to show the layouts that he did for issue 10 of Freak Force, which I have here. So it's kind of fun to be able to compare some of these panels with the layouts. It's too small to see anyway, but yeah, so you can really check out some of the process, which is also funny because Larson doesn't fill in all the dialogue. He just kind of writes in blah, 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 more convincing stuff. He's just kind of making work for himself in the future there, but it's pretty funny. Maybe it's funnier if you read it yourself. So even with the bonus sketch layouts, there's still room for Dragonbert with a cameo from the Highbrow logo. Then there's the Megaton Man by Don Simpson, and a single page for Desperate Times by Chris Eliopoulos. Finally, an ad for the collected edition of Savage Dragon Gang War, printed on that nice fancy paper like that Spawn book, it says there. So congratulations for making it this far. Next up is Dragon versus Thor in issue number